The Sistine Chapel's ceiling, painted some 500 years ago by Michelangelo, reveals the prevailing mythos of the late medieval period of human history. At the center of this immense fresco is the famous image of the creation of Adam, God reaching down to man to bestow upon him the gift of knowledge. Indeed, such supernatural explanations for the complexity of the human mind are unacceptable by the more critical scientific standards of today. We demand to know how God bestowed this gift, not just the obvious fact that he did. Hidden in this same image, though, is evidence that Michelangelo's understanding of the mythological construction of belief was ahead of his time. An entourage of angels accompanies God, draping him in the unmistakable outline of humanity's most powerful asset, its brain. Um, if you guys haven't seen the painting I'm referring to, just type in the creation of man or the creation of Adam in Google, and you'll see it. Uh, the artist is here illustrating both God's creation of man and man's creation of God. In its literalist forms, Christianity asserts a God who exists high above his created masterpiece, divinely designing it from without, turning dust, substance, into intelligence, form. In a similar way, the scientist uses the technological skill offered by the brain to construct meaning from the ambiguities of the manifest world, thereby dragging God down from heaven, chopping him into parts, and renaming each as the ego. Every individual thus becomes the designer of his or her own world. In this sense, God refers only to that which provides the necessary ground of being upon which any explanatory edifice must build its foundation. For the pre-modern Christian, this ground was the biblical God the Father, the holiest of holies. For the modern scientist, the ground becomes the rational mind, the ego, God shrunken and internalized. God becomes, for the scientist, the only thing Descartes could not doubt. His famous dictum, "I think, therefore I am," provided modern science with its own creation myth. Science's big answers, then, are no more final than any of humanity's previous answers. Throughout our history, the elite class of the time have always championed their own version of how things came to be the way they are. Usually, these explanations come subliminally packaged as to promote and maintain the current secular order. Church officials once claimed to offer the only route to heaven, and an intellectually helpless populace was forced to obey their every command. Scripture was written only in Latin, making it impossible for the uneducated masses to interpret their tradition for themselves. We find ourselves in a similar situation today, as scientists rule over the collective psyche of society from behind their university desks and obscure scientific journals, claiming to have answered the big questions with theories like evolution by natural selection. Most normal people, though, not having the scientific background to fully comprehend such ideas, are forced either to take the side of academic authority, thereby accepting the oversimplified pop science soundbites they hear used in the media, or reject science in favor of some prior mythological authority, such as the Bible or their local church pastor. This creates a situation where the average person assumes they must pick one or the other: science or God, evolution or creationism, reason or faith. In reality, such dichotomies exist only in the minds of the cerebrally meager. When one has understood the intricacies of the scientific worldview, it becomes clear that science neither proves nor disproves the spiritual. While it may have much to say against literal belief in the miracles of the Bible, it has little to say about ultimate matters in general. It is almost universally true, though, that the scientific heroes of our past, while usually rejecting notions of a personal God, nonetheless find it, through their investigations into the natural world, a numinous quality so profound that it may as well be called spiritual. This was true for Newton, for Einstein, for Eddington, the list goes on. Scientific theories do indeed go a long way toward explaining the how of existence. What they fail miserably at is explaining the why. This is precisely the reason that so many scientific geniuses end up believing in some sense of the mystical. Their penetrating investigations reveal to them a reality so far beyond mere descriptions that the pure experience of its mystery becomes a form of worship. We see then that the hows of science cannot replace the whys of spirituality. Dawkins' suggestion that we reinterpret ourselves in light of natural selection as nothing more than survival machines simply will not do. The human psyche is so structured that it cannot function without equal doses of both knowledge and purpose. To be fair, Dawkins suggests that our ability to think and speak has given us what he believes amounts to purpose. The fact that our brains developed enough to allow us to create our own goals is what separates us from the blind forces of evolution. Unlike animals, we humans can decide for ourselves what kind of world we want to live in. Dawkins cites our mastery of technology as a prime example of this skill, as we can now alleviate hunger with new strains of crops, predict the weather with high-speed computers, and cure diseases with pharmaceuticals. While these innovations are doubtlessly great achievements, I must point out that around 1 billion people remain starving. Hurricanes and tornadoes still kill thousands every year, and pharmaceutical companies participate in both one of the most profitable and corrupt businesses in economic history, researching not cures, but treatments, as the former simply wouldn't make enough people rich enough to keep the racket going. We can see then that science can certainly provide the means, but when it comes to the motivations, it is silent. Human values and meaning, therefore, must come through some other means I'm prepared to call spiritual. By spiritual, I do not mean we have to revert to superstitious belief in a vengeful God who will smite those who disobey. Rather, I refer to the individually mediated experience of that which transcends the everyday categories of the mind, that which cannot be explained, but most assuredly can be experienced. Such experiences universally produce feelings of compassion and connection to nature and to one's fellow man. Only with such an internal understanding of one's place in the world can the powerful tools of science be used for good. Science and religion, then, must be integrated, asserting the practical truths of science above and beyond the transcendent truths of spirituality leaves one in a valueless world where, indeed, only the fittest will survive. If we wish to fully embrace our dual human countenance, being as we are both animal and angel, we must respect the worth of each sphere, combining the best of both to create a new and more integral human future. I just wanted to make a note here. When I referred to natural selection as just one of humanity's ways of understanding its own origins, it's the latest and most empirically verifiable story that we have ever had. And by that, I wanted to explain what I mean by empiricism there. So I'm just going to read this note here. Modern-day science has reduced the meaning of empiricism to what can be experienced through the five senses, thereby negating even the possibility that one might objectively investigate matters of the mind and spirit through various types of intersubjective, hermeneutical, or interpretive study. The reason Darwin's theory is the most empirically justified is because no special injunction is required for one to see with their eyes that humans bear a striking resemblance to primates, or that during the early weeks of pregnancy the fetuses of many animals appear almost identical. Even the layman can see such things. However, for one to see, for example, the empirically verified spiritual truth that all supposedly self-existing entities gain their apparent separateness only through their contextual relationship to all other entities, this is called dependent origination, and that they therefore exist primordially as sunyata, or emptiness, of the One, they would need to follow the carefully prescribed methods of the masters of their preferred tradition. So in other words, science treats empiricism as only what the five senses can detect, whereas empirical could also mean what the eye of the mind can detect, or the eye of the spirit. There's a philosopher, Ken Wilber, who talks about how we have three different levels of empirical investigation. We have the eye of the spirit, which gives us this intuitive opening into these transcendental realms, and the way we would have to study and map those realms would be obviously through some kind of intersubjective study, where the way you can test if some kind of intuition is valid or not is by spreading it around the community and seeing if it lines up with everybody else's experience. So in that sense, even these inner sciences of the mind can be empirical if they have some kind of intersubjective testing going on in the community.